Afternoon everyone, it's Sharon here from Climate Action North and the next episode of our Let's Talk Nature and Climate conversations. And today I'm delighted to welcome Dr. Phoebe Carter, who is an ecologist working for Biodiversity Matters and Habitat First. And I first met Phoebe when she came up to conference in the Northeast for the construction sector. So welcome Phoebe, hello.
Hi, nice to be here.
How are you today?
Yeah, good. Yes, yeah, very well.
Good, good. So, as I say, we first met, didn't we, a while ago when you came to the Northeast to talk to the construction sector about building with nature, because I should have said that you're a building with nature assessor, aren't you, really? So
yes, that's right. Yeah. So I was just talking about sort of building with nature and sort of building in a better way than tradition.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Traditional sort of development and business and building is all about the standard traditional practice, isn't it? So how do you feel that that differs in your work? I mean, I know you're going to tell us a lot about it in the presentation because you're going to give us a little presentation, aren't you? But, you know, do you feel that that's, is it catching on or is it still quite a way behind, do you think?
I think it is catching on, and there's lots of people who are willing to build in a better way and build and not just build, but it is a slow process, really. I think we've taken nature for granted for so long that we can just destroy it and put some place that's made of bricks and mortar and got very few features for wildlife, and but we really can't be doing that anymore. We're running out of space and we're destroying biodiversity, and that's a significant issue, whether people think it is or not. It really is. So things have got changing. It is changing more slowly than maybe we would like, but people are getting there.
How did you start working in nature then? Were you always interested in nature, or did you do a different career before you moved into this role?
I was always interested in nature right from being a kid. It was in the days where we were allowed to hide all day and you just came home for dinner, and no one seemed to mind, and it seemed safer, didn't it? So I was always in the garden. I remember finding birds' nests with eggs in them, bringing the eggs in and putting them in our airing cupboard, trying to hatch them out. But they never hatched, did they? They just sort of made everything smell. But it was that whole sort of thing that by nature, and you could go out and you could try those things, and we're out all day just making fun with all the things that were around us. And I think it started from there. And I remember being about 7 and on a beach in the rain in Pembrokeshire with my parents and my brother, and just rock pooling and being so interested. My mum said, "Oh, you could be a marine biologist," and that was it. From that moment I decided I was going to do marine, which I did, and then but obviously sort of changed tack over time, and after that sort of did a PhD in look at pollution on sort of our waterways, so on fish health, and seeing how that could maybe translates up what was happening to the fish may have translated up to problems in health, sort of drinking water levels of pollution that you would find. And then I sort of worked for the Mammal Society for quite a few years, and national sort of surveys. So we ran the National Water Shrew Survey, winter mammal monitoring. When I left there, I sort of became a consultant, but I became a trustee of the Mammal Society. I'm in the chair of their surveys committee, and I did that for sort of another 4 years before disappearing overseas for a little bit, and ending up on a little island in the South Pacific Island. It's about 8 miles by 5 miles big, I think. And I drafted their sort of first natural resource management plan. And then when I came back from there, I started working for the company, Lower Mill Estate, who are owned by Habitat First. I've sort of been associated with them for about 12 years now, on and off, and sort of now sort of working for them and running Biodiversity Matters, as well as sort of being a building with nature assessor too. So done a bit of everything, but actually I think because managing all of these large sort of sites, and they're all very different in different parts of the country, and they've all got different habitats and different species, it's kind of made it easier to oversee all of that by not specialist in one field. It's given me sort of I suppose greater inroads into being able to look after sort of a whole range of habitat and species, which has been great. I've been very lucky, or I am very lucky.
Certainly sound like it, Phoebe. I mean, you've had sort of like a lot of experience across a lot of different habitats as well, which is great, really.
Yeah.
All very exciting as well.
Mm.
So you're moving into a sector where we desperately need more building with nature, I think. So are you going to be able to tell us a little bit about what you're working on today? Would you like to share a little presentation or something with us today?
Yeah, I'll share. I've got like a little presentation. Apologies, it's been very quickly cobbled together, so you just have to bear with me. But right, where is my share button? Share screen. Sorry. There
You got
we
it at the bottom.
Load it up. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about building for biodiversity, because we can't, as I said, we can't really keep just sort of pushing nature to one side now for our own benefit. We've reached a point where that's it's not feasible anymore. And where I live in the Cotswolds now, they've just declared an ecological emergency, which is something absolutely brilliant. And I do hope a lot of other councils will declare that and act on it accordingly. So everybody knows that Boris is build, but we can't build unless we build back better, build for biodiversity, build for climate resilience, and build for people's well-being. I mean, there's absolutely no point in creating all of these sort of soulless places. We have to build. Obviously, we are a growing nation, and we have to build. But let's build back better if we're going to do this. Let's not just rush into it and cover everything in concrete and tarmac. So why does well, I mean, it matters to all of us, doesn't it? I mean, it's the air we breathe, the water we drink, clothes we wear, it's our fuel, it's our how the homes are heated, everything sort of it comes down to biodiversity in the end. And I think for so long now, people are just thinking biodiversity doesn't really matter. And we have got biodiversity net gain, which is coming in, but that there's nothing that sort of singularly sort of encompasses sort of biodiversity, well-being, climate resilience in sort of these sort of building designs and schemes, apart from building with nature, which is why I am a big sort of advocate, because it does consider every aspect and not everything just in isolation, because we can't consider everything in isolation anymore. All of these things are connected, and we're realizing that. So I will just quickly mention biodiversity net gain. I am no expert on biodiversity net gain. I deliver a lot of biodiversity where I work, but I don't actually work on the net gain process. Most of our sites are up and running already, so it's not relevant right now. But it is going to be a good stepping stone to get biodiversity into these developments, as long as nobody finds any loophole to work their way through. But first of all, so you've got to apply the mitigation hierarchy. You've got to do everything possible to avoid and minimize impacts on biodiversity. And, you know, something we do on our sites is look at what we've already got there, try and avoid those habitats and species, you know, keep them where they are and make a feature of them, rather than out sort of all the hedgerows and starting again with some scrappy hedgerows of poor quality. You know, how about retaining those ones you've got? So only what you know, sort of you have to think about you know, removing those things and compensating for the losses. This is important and equitable. I mean, get everybody involved locally, you know, behind your scheme. And I think that's why building with nature is so important, because if you can say that your scheme is going for building with nature equipment, that's something to deliver to everybody in your local area. You know, we're not just building a bog standard development, you're building something that is going to look better for people who live into it, and it's going to be better for wildlife as well. And that's a big thing for sort of local stakeholders. make a measurable net gain, you know, do everything you can to make biodiversity count, and that's really, really obviously important. Go above and beyond that if you can, be additional, achieve nature conservation, exceed sort of your obligations. You want to create a net gain legacy, so you've got to generate those long-term benefits, but to nature. There's all well and good putting in all of these features and thinking about biodiversity, but if you just then sort of go, you know, that's done and dusted, you've got to think about the lifetime of those features that you're putting in and making sure they sort of retain their functionality, you know, sort of into the future. And be transparent, you know, communicate everything. Don't just sort of, you know, start your development and you haven't spoken to anybody locally. Try and sort of get people engaged, and I think if you are, you know, really trying to put in biodiversity into your sites, people will be appreciative of it. So this is sort of be inclusive and equitable, like I said, and be transparent, you know, work closely with your NGOs and your statutory bodies, with the local community, and keep people updated. These are just some examples from Habitat First. We try and put up signs saying what we're doing at all times. So this area now, we've got protected zone for great crested newts. So rather than people sort of looking over and wondering why, you know, that suddenly, well, there were 3 new ponds, we created ponds for them, but, you know, we want people to know what that is, not that we're just creating sort of ponds, you know, for no reason, that we're creating these ponds as part of our sort of, you know, as our part of our great conservation, and that really helps. And then just sort of normal information boards as well, really help people sort of be involved in what you're doing and know that you're doing something outside of the ordinary. So achieve the best outcomes for biodiversity. You know, sort of at the bottom of this picture on the left, you can see the one of the ponds that I was talking about. We created 3 of these ponds. We put up boxes trying to attract various raptors. The house on stilts there is a bat house that we made for brown loss. That's built on top of the old sand hopper from the sand quarry. So it's kind of like reduce, reuse, recycle, use everything you've got there. That's being used now. It took 2 years to build it, and they will come, is my firm belief. And you know, do what you can. If you know, again, it comes back to, I think, knowing what species you've got on a site. You know, read the environmental assessment. Know that, you know, if you've got breeding skylark, why not retain sort of areas of grassland for them if you can, or put in certain areas for them. If you don't know, or you're not interested in what you've already got on that site or near that site, you best decision for biodiversity. You know, you want to boost the populations of things that you've got on your site or nearby, and then make the site better for a whole range of other things that will hopefully then come in. And these are just some little baby barn owls that we've got at one of our sites, Lower Mill Estate, and they've been breeding there for about 19 years in that nest box, which has been a terrible year for barn owls everywhere, and we had no luck this year, unfortunately. But generally that's a super project. So really what I want to talk about is building nature. I've said the things that really does make places better for people and wildlife, and I think that's really, really important. We all benefit from, you know, from sort of in nature, as we discussed earlier, and this is certainly a way to do it in development. So building with nature is the UK's first benchmark for green infrastructure, and it draws evidence and good practice guidance, and it's developed high quality green infrastructure at each stage of development process, from planning and design through to long-term maintenance. So the standards for building with nature, there's lots of different standards, and they're free to use, and they can really assist with the planning and development of new places and communities. And those are monitored and updated by a standards board of real experts, you know, to make sure that building with nature is always achieving the best. So you've got these sets of standards. So you've got your core standards, your well-being standards, your water standards, and your wildlife standards. So your core standards are designed to distinguish green infrastructure from your traditional approach to providing open and green space. So you're trying to create a multifunctional network. You're trying to think about your don't think about your development as just your development. Think about your development as part of the wider landscape. So where your development is going, how can that connect into that wider landscape? And is there a hedgerow system adjacent to it that you could feed into with suitable matching native hedgerow in your development? You're extending sort of wildlife corridors in, you know, if you're putting in cycle networks or footpaths, you know, think about if you're having to provide new hedgerows for that, think about providing hedgerows suitable for already live there, and you know, avoid bringing in those sort of non-native species that aren't you know, of much benefit to our wildlife that native species are. And you want your development to be climate resilient as well and future proof. You want it to, you know, to keep going, to keep rolling over, not just to be something you just, you know, and then walk away. You know, let's have it with lasting benefits for everybody. You've then got your well-being standards. Now these secure health and well-being benefits through delivering those green infrastructure where people live, so people are kind of immersed in that sort of in the green infrastructure and assets and all of that brings with. Could be looking out of their looking out onto their gardens, and that garden may have a small pond. That pond may not be full all year round, it might be sort of an ephemeral pond, but that's still a purpose. Or they might look out and they might see a you know, a nice hedgerow, or rain gardens that are designed there to trap water. You know, it's all of those serve a function for nature, but also as a beautiful sort of aesthetic, benefiting people as well. You want to make sure that there's people, you know, sort of landscape planting is there's something for people to see all year round, and something that benefits wildlife all year round as well. So we tend to plant quite a lot of things like dog, you know, it has that lovely red colour in the winter on the stems, and that's quite nice. When everything else is sort of bare, you've still got a bit of colour there. You want to make it locally relevant, you know, if you can, stone and you know, other construction materials that have got local relevance as well, and yeah, and that make your site local character area that you're in. Your water standards, you're trying to obviously water capture is going to be a big issue as we go forward, you know, with rising temperatures, and we're already building a lot and struggling to provide water for those the amount of new builds that we are creating, and that's something to really consider. So any new development should be thinking about all the ways that it can sort of capture water, and not only better quality as it goes downstream. We'll look at some of those things in a little minute. Then your wildlife standards, you're trying to create places where nature can flourish, both within your outside of the boundaries of your scheme as well. So you want to make it bigger and better, more joined up, and create these sort of ecological networks, positive construction as well. So with your well-being standards, so as I said, you're trying to sort of make it accessible, inclusive, seasonal, enjoymentally relevant, socially sustainable, distinctive, and definitely available to everybody. You know, it shouldn't be sort of everybody should be able to benefit from putting into your development. So some examples of this sort of, so you make your landscaping planting natural and native, and it provides sort of colour all year round. You can encourage active travel by putting in things like green streets, you know, which are much quieter, more peaceful streets, walk only, or you can put in a sort of a slower speed limit in certain places, which encourages people then to walk and cycle, because it makes places or feel safer for them. And obviously you can put sort of seating in natural areas, sort of find something that's you know, make a single development but put some natural sort of seating areas around it, and somewhere that people can go for a bit of peace and quiet, you know, or seating, you know, beneath trees. So you're offering sort of people different places in sort of summer to get some shade from the sun, but likewise, why not put, you know, some seating somewhere where in winter people are going to be craving the sunshine. If the sun shines out, make sure you've got in those areas. So you're just looking at those sort of little ways to try and improve the the way people feel about where they live. And I think the more people feel happy where they live, they want to invest. I don't mean financially, but the more they want to invest in looking after it and taking care of it. And that's a big consideration as well. So the other things you can think, can you offer food growing areas? You know, if your development is going to be large, can you offer sort of an allotments area? Allotments are brilliant. You bring multiple generations together, and you sort of future-proofing sort of food production as well. And you're also, again, getting people outdoors and in nature as well. Providing footpaths, cycleways, those are really important, connecting those up to existing sort of networks as well. So you're the distance that people can travel from their home sort of on safe and quiet lanes is really important. And again, sort of just native planting is beautiful, as in the summer are absolutely stunning. Sometimes we put up notices explaining why we've got sort of native banks like this, because sometimes people expect things down to nothing, and some people can assume that if something is not sort of bowling green sort of lawn flat, that it's, you know, something's gone wrong somewhere. But if you put up, this is your bug and butterfly bank, which is you know what that is, that attracts a huge amount of, this one at the bottom attracts a huge amount of invertebrates. Putting that makes people recognize what it is, and again sort of have a better link to nature and why you're doing these certain things. Again, the water standards, you're trying to manage water for quantity, so you're trying to keep water on site. Quality, you're trying to make it better quality going downstream, so you're not sending more sort of nutrients downstream than was going downstream before your development arrived. Make amenity and biodiversity better, obviously through what type of way you're building these sort of lakes and ponds. You want to build in this resilient, locally sort of distinctive. So SUDS, you've got your SUDS system, which are sustainable drainage schemes, which sounds so dull, doesn't it? But if it had a better name, I think people might think about them in a slightly better way. That's a SUDS channel that you can see there. That's connecting two lakes and also sort of forming part of a flood alleviation scheme as well on one of the sites I work on. But that's not just, I mean, that's not SUDS, that's got kingfishers on it, it's got otters passing through it. We're getting water bowls moving around. So if you can start to think about it, not just as serving its function as a drainage channel, as something to capture water, which is exactly what we need it for, but if you can think it's got a dual function, then it becomes a much more interesting and actually can become a selling point then to your development. If you can create something like that, people love living near water. House prices generally go up if you build a development that's got water by it, because people do like to invest in something, and something as simple as that channel, even not connected to a lake, will bring eyes, amphibians, you know, a whole range of wildlife that you might not otherwise see. Look at your soft landscaping. You're trying to create as much soft landscaping as possible, hard landscaping. A lot of places now, so including so Habitat First, but also lots of the other schemes I'm looking at, using permeable parking areas. So you've got these sort of these areas where they're not tarmacked over. You can sort of put gravel on there, obviously to provide a park, but that allows water to be sort of sucked back down into your SUDS train, and traps water and helps retain it. Perhaps with hard standing, where the water's just running straight off and you know disappears. Look at maximizing those sort of opportunities for landscaping, you know, wherever you can get sort of large flower beds in, or trees, you know, they're all going to help sort of soak up water and help sort of retain water on site. So this is just some examples here. So these are in the early stages, obviously, so trees haven't developed that well, but you're using permeable materials, soft landscaping. Obviously that's retaining water, but it's also helping to avoid the mobilization of pollutants going downstream, because those pollutants can drop out. The more of these sort of sud systems that they move through, the fewer the pollutants you've got as you go downstream. Look at different opportunities. Can you treat wastewater on site? One of our sites, we're treating wastewater through reed bed systems. Perhaps you could harvest rainwater from your roofs. You can feed rainwater for off roofs into these ponds. So the ponds are sort of kept topped up, but with rainwater. Can you reuse water? Can you have grey water use on site? Ponds are so valuable in water control, but also for well-being and wildlife. They don't have to be massive to make a difference. They don't have to be particularly deep if people are concerned about sort of health and safety issues. Small shallow ponds can provide a huge amount of benefit to wildlife, but also to people if you're sat there and you're able to watch all of those species that are coming up to your pond. So your wildlife standards, so you're creating these places where nature can flourish. So you are looking to make things bigger and better for wildlife, more joined up, locally relevant, by that you do know the species you've already got in that area, and you are sort of targeting them. You're targeting, target your species of conservation concern first, and in doing, you're probably going to be creating places that attract a whole range of other species too. And try and build more sensitively with different build styles perhaps than you would normally consider. So as part of that biodiversity net gain, you're trying to apply that mitigation to avoid losing biodiversity in the first place. So protect your species and habitats of conservation concern from by knowing where, master planning carefully around them, and you can even make them a feature of your site. That sort of great crested newt pond I showed you, there's those three, we've built 3 new ponds, existing great crested newt pond, retained a significant area of terrestrial habitat around that, and that will in itself will become a feature within it. Will become a quiet, lovely area that people can walk through on sort of a designated footpath, but that will be retained and protected for the newts, the lifetime of the development. So it is possible to make newts the good guys and not the bad guys. Wildlife it is constantly considered to be an inconvenience to development, and I think that's something we've really got to change. And obviously enhance existing habitats and connectivity to benefit the species on site, and to bring in new species on site. So one of the sites we got down in Dorset with Habitat First, we've been managing a hedgerow for a while for dormice, because it's the closest hedgerow to an area where we know we've got dormice in. So we've been trying to sort of increase that connectivity into the development. That hedgerow is behind the first village we've built, and last year we found in it using one of our dormouse monitoring tubes. So that was a huge, felt like a huge sort of success to actually bring. That effort was worth it. So that the more hedgerows we build and connect up to those going forwards, it should mean that dormice will continue to move across the site, increasing their their range, and sort of safeguarding their populations as well. So you're trying to achieve a measurable overall gain in the services that ecosystems provide, while contributing towards nature conservation priorities. So again, I mentioned this, take a landscape-led approach, look at how your project fits into the local landscape, shape it to that local character area, and just don't see your development as an isolated unit. That's so important in terms of wildlife, that that wildlife that was in that local area is enhanced and protected. as I said earlier, I'm a big believer of build it and they will come. Your sud systems again of ponds and swales, they're going to attract a whole range of biodiversity, bird boxes, bat boxes, bee bricks. If they're put in the right height, will generally get used, and deliver a great boost to biodiversity just by doing that. And that's not a difficult nor an expensive for developers to do these days, even if you only choose to do those things. A lot of things can be retrofitted. Don't just assume that because you've finished something or that's the end of it. You can go back and you can sort of make things better, and that is sort of part of, I suppose, building back better. That opportunity to sort of have a look at the schemes you have completed and see if it is possible to make them any better. So be addition, these other things, put up sort of swift boxes. There's your bee brick. You don't have to be as additional as Lower Mill Estate there, which is putting up an osprey platform. But it's those things. It's thinking slightly out of the box. This is the plant you can see there, something called Heath lobelia. That's something that at Silver Lake, which is another Habitat First site, they've got the first population. It's translocated population of that plant. There's only 6 populations in the UK, and we were involved in the translocation of that plant to the Silver Lake site, and we've established the 7th population of that plant there now, and that plant will therefore be sort of cared for and managed going forward into the future. So it's just trying to be additional. An additional again doesn't have to cost much. It doesn't have to be translocations, which actually costed nothing in the end. But that came about by speaking to ecologists and your NGOs and finding out where you can make a better investment for wildlife areas. Everyone is wildflower crazy at the minute, but I just want to show you this because again you can put in wildflowers anywhere as long as they're native and of local provenance is the best, and not these pictorial meadows that you get. You really want your native species from places like Emore's Gate and Habitat Aid. They provide really native wildflower species, and they'll help you match up the correct species for your soil and your local area. But this was an area that we spent ages just cutting every year, and nobody was using it, and it wasn't of particular value to wildlife, or hardly any value to wildlife. So a couple of years ago we stripped the topsoil off and sowed it with native wildflower species, and the picture you can see at the bottom was with it in its first year. Here it's turned more to oxeye daisies and thistles, but they're all of benefit. That only has to be cut maybe once, twice, cut and collected, as opposed to all that investment you've got in people mowing grass weekly. Can really significantly reduce your ongoing costs, as well as providing huge benefit to biodiversity. And it doesn't have to be like that. It doesn't have to be on that scale. You can do that anywhere. Even small pockets of that in boxes, in anything like that can make a big difference. The most important thing perhaps for all of these things is in terms of building with nature is the management and the monitoring of these. You've got to be future proofing your green infrastructure for it to remain sort of functional and to be successful. There's little point in looking. So perhaps like developing, this is a bad picture I've chosen. It's of a swale. I don't know if you can see a ditch at the bottom there. It's obviously great for water capture, and that feeds into a small pond. That's right at the beginning of its life. It's now vegetation, and it's just ensuring that vegetation is retained, and that it's not cut down the same as the lawns. You'd be then taking away that biodiversity value and that bioretention from that swale. So it's trying to sort of always ensure that these things are managed going forward, that who manage your development is aware that your wildflower area doesn't need to be mown on a weekly basis, is aware of which bits they can mow and they can't mow, which checking your bird boxes aren't falling apart, things like that. If you're putting in which is great. Everyone's very into sort of putting in the holes in the fencing, hedgehogs, which is absolutely brilliant. But you know, how do we make sure that homeowners don't come in and block those up, you know, worried that they might get cats or something else in? You know, do we, as developers, or not a developer, but as developers, do we need to provide homeowners with information about why they've got that that hole in their you know, just sort of that sort of education, connecting people to nature, hoping that they therefore want to retain those features in place. Can you build more sustainably as well? Can you build climate resilience into your scheme? Look at using SIPs construction for all new buildings. Thermal performance, you're using less timber, the carbon footprint is lower. Green roofs, wildflower or sedum roofs, they are an expense, but sedum roofs can be used and are quite easy to maintain. Again, can you use these permeable surfaces? Can you put in small ponds, lakes, ditches? Make sure you are using your native tree and shrub planting, because you know, they're all helping to sort of soak up water. The trees are going to help urban cooling in the summer as we do get sort of hotter summers. Can you use sort of natural building materials or recyclable building materials? And can you know, think about sort of electrical vehicle charging points, because obviously that is going to become you know, a much greater feature of sort of our travel future. So just to sort of summarize what building with nature can do, it can help reduce planning uncertainty. If you get sort of a building with Nature Assessor in right at the beginning and advise you on making your scheme better for nature and people, that can help when you go in for planning. So you've got a smoother, faster passing. You've got a mechanism that's helping to secure net gain, health and well-being, natural water management and landscape connections, and you're turning ecological constraints into opportunities. And I think from my point of view, that is so important to stop looking at every bit of nature that's on a site that you want to develop as something that is tedious, tiresome, and shouldn't be there, and it's turning those into a real asset for your site. And I think that is possible to do, and it doesn't have to cost the earth to do that. So again, this is just a quick slide about who the benchmark is for the public. It's a user-friendly guide for homeowners. They can understand the importance of nature in the built environment. For planners, it can help plan for better outcomes. And for developers, as we said, it can reduce planning uncertainty, and you're creating you know, high quality schemes for people and wildlife. So thank you.
Thank you, that's brilliant. I'm just going to change the gallery here. Yeah, that was really good. Thank you very much, Phoebe. I don't know whether you could see me smiling all the way through that presentation. It's just marvellous. I could just happy. You know, I just think it's like, why wouldn't you, if you were a developer, why wouldn't you actually consider building with nature? Why would you not be doing that as standard? It just seems so perfect, a perfect solution, doesn't it, for everything that we should be doing going forward. I just don't understand why it isn't becoming a mandatory. I know they're making sort of biodiversity net gain a mandatory commitment, I suppose, but you know, from a best practice, from a responsibility point of view, you know, why wouldn't they make building with nature standard? I mean, how long has this standard been going, Phoebe?
So it's only, I think it's only about 4 years now, 3 or 4 years. So it's making really good inroads. And yeah, it is really making a difference, and hopefully it will continue to do so. But yeah, to my mind, it you know, sort of a system like that sort of delivers everything that you would want to be delivering. If we are going to have to build, let's, you know, build for everybody and everything, and that sort of is encompassed within that with nature. sort of accreditation scheme, and yeah, it'd be super, wouldn't it, if it was rolled out everywhere. But even if people sort of just go away from this and read the standard sort of nature sort of website and read those, and just to start applying some of those, and it's just that mindset needs to be changed, and it may take a long time, but even if just one or two things were sort of started to filter into developments, that's a big step in itself. But yeah, going forwards, it'd be super if everybody sort of had to achieve those standards, because it doesn't have to be costly. Obviously some of those schemes that are working, they are at sort of the higher end, but a bat box, a bird box and a bee brick into each property doesn't have to cost more than £100 extra per house. That's not a significant hedgehog highway through a series of fences, and there's nothing worse than looking at a development where everybody's fenced into their own sort of little castle, but there's absolutely no access footing in there. Use a different type of fencing, perhaps, something that's not fully panelled, and then maybe that helps neighbours a little bit as well, and improves community, and again, that's a big part of well-being, isn't it, sort of feeling a part of a community, which perhaps you don't if enclosed into your own space.
I mean, I can totally see where all of those areas of the standard just gel together really, really well, don't they? Everything just flows into what we should be doing and how we should be developing going forward. And I mean, you mentioned in the presentation that the resources are free to use. Is that all the resources are obviously on the website? They are free to use, but is the standard, achieving the standard, I mean, what kind of costs are people looking at to achieve the Building with Nature standard?
Yeah, so that depends on what you're going for. So there's a design award, which is for accredited or master plan, and that will have a different to an award where you can go for good or excellent of a completed for a whole completed development, and again the costs will then vary depending on the size of your scheme, but all that information is sort of available through Nature. But yeah, I mean, wouldn't it be great if that was mandatory, and the costs were met by the government rather than individual developers who trying to make a difference. Yeah, but at the moment, all that information can be sort of achieved, sort of gained online.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's brilliant. I'm going to definitely look into it, because I think we should have, I know we sort of met when you came up to do the workshop up here, but I really think we should have like some sort of masterclass in, building with nature, and get people together, all the developers. I mean, I might get onto this actually, so I'm just whirring around in my head, but get all of the developers in the region on this masterclass, either through the construction sector membership scheme, and just say, talk it through, how easy is it to do. I'm sure you've already done this down in your neck of the woods anyway, but how easy is it to do? What are the barriers? Because there'll always be barriers. There are barriers that people actually put in the way that are not even barriers, but they've developed them because they're obviously just a barrier. But it's a bit like, I've been working in the renewable energy sector. It's a similar thing about, integrating renewables into a new development is incredibly hard, because it's just not traditional. It's just different, isn't it? Something that's different. And I think this almost has to become the new traditional anyway, doesn't it? Building with nature. Yeah.
Our new normal anyway. Why don't we start a new normal in construction?
Yes, let's do that. I'm all up for that. Yes, I'm up for that, definitely. Let's get it started. Let's get it piloted as well in the Northeast and bring you up. I mean, it's about making biodiversity count, isn't it? Something has to change anyway, and it is a shame when you hear, distressing when we hear the build, but like you said, absolutely has to be building back better, greener, and with nature in mind. And I was interested to see all of the amazing sort of photographs in your presentation of the retrofit as well, because obviously we've got a lot of buildings up here that could easily be retrofit with things like the bat boxes or the bird boxes. And you'll know, as on one of the Let's Talk Nature and Climate series, we had the Swift man, Edward,
Yeah.
talking about Swift boxes. And you know, things like that can all make a difference. I am really keen to get something like that going up here in the northeast in the business parks. So alongside pollinator parks, we would have things like retrofitting boxes for nature, whether it be Swift boxes, bat boxes, or bird boxes in general. So, but again, it's so easy. You said it was just a matter of a couple of £100 for a project that might have cost thousands. You know, it's a tiny minimal amount of money that can be spent to bring it up.
And especially for something like the swifts, you know, I mean, that is, you know, they will be sort of more industrial areas where the buildings are higher for them to nest, and if you can provide those nesting opportunities for them, you know, you've got a real chance of boosting a population. Then, you know, that's contributing to a sort of you know, national recovery of a species as well. So yeah, it's totally worth trying, particularly if the amount vast, which it wouldn't be to, you know, to install sort of some boxes in one area.
And you know, all the projects that you've worked on, Phoebe, have you got a particular favourite? I mean, I know they're all good because I've seen them all.
Well, they're all lovely. But I mean, yeah, I mean, the Habitat First sites are my favourite because they started 21 years ago trying to nature before it was a thing. So yeah, those are very close to my heart. And Silver Lake down in Dorset is a super project. We're trying to protect and create areas of new heathland. They're not vast areas, but it's all again about sort of, you know, connecting up to an isolated heathland, you know, right in the south, and creating sort of more areas of that if we can on our site, just to, you know, create an extension of like a habitat type that's sort of declining rapidly. So it would be that, but there's a lot. I love any scheme that is trying to do something different, because it's so important. It doesn't have to be on the scale of the Habitat First site. It would be lovely if it was, but that, you know, that's not going to be achievable everywhere. But if people just take little bits and just make a different, be it with wildflowers, be it with bird boxes, you know, all of those things make for something that is better than what has been the traditional norm. Life is excluded from development. That can't go on.
And you know, the Building with Nature standard, then, if you were applying to do that, you were a new build, a new development, and you were applying to be on the Building with Nature and, you know, going for the standard, does it always have to be obviously new build, or can you retrofit? Can you sort of like retrospectively apply for something that would be Building with Nature?
Yeah, you can retrospectively. Yeah, you can retrospectively apply. We retrospectively applied for Lower Mill Estate because, as I said, that had been going for 21 years. So yeah, we did that. So you can, yeah, so you can look at, you know, is already existing, already doing something really different, and yeah, you can get that sort of accredited retrospectively. Yeah, so it can be either, and that's a good thing. So it can start right at the planning phase, you know, which is obviously brilliant and the best time to start getting going, because it might help you through the whole planning system. Or yeah, you can take a site that's already been completed and get it accredited like that as well.
I like that idea. I think that's really good, because I imagine that people might have thought about Building with Nature and thinking, oh, it's just for a brand new scheme, but actually you can retrospectively do it. I think that's really good. Might
Yeah.
get people interested in doing that. And I suppose one of my other questions was about the Building with Nature, is that you've got things like the infrastructure benefits as well, you know, even just as something as small as putting a tiny pond in, you know, for example. It's so easy really when you think about it, isn't it, to just put a little pond in or something. I'm actually thinking about a few business parks that might benefit from a pond, but it's just so easy. Those measures, I suppose, are quite easy to achieve. And by doing
and again, they don't have to cost a fortune. You know, you can dig a small pond, and you don't even have to pay out on it. You know, these things, they naturally sort of get colonized ridiculously quickly. You know, within a few days or weeks, you'll have, you know, various creatures living in your pond, and then the plants, you know, themselves, and that's a great way. So actually, you haven't even had to spend out on planting if you don't want to. You know, you can just leave it to sort of colonize naturally. But that difference that can make, you know, you may bring in new birds that you hadn't got for drinking. You may bring in foxes or badgers. You may start using, or hedgehogs, you know, for a drink on their evening walks. Then right down to all of the smaller insects which are going to attract bats maybe, and birds. So just one small pond can have a big knock-on effect. And again, for sort of, you know, retaining water somewhere else and making a difference to water capture too. So.
And my last question is about the planners as well, Phoebe. How educated, I suppose, shouldn't really say educated, but how knowledgeable are the planners about building with nature? Do you find that some planners know all about it, or some planners don't, and haven't come across it?
Building with Nature was it's the brainchild of Gemma Jerome, who is just phenomenal, and she has done a huge nationally to make the scheme aware to planners, sort of right down from Cornwall right up to Scotland. So there's sort of now Building with Nature assessors sort of country, and planners are aware of it. So it's just sort of keeping that momentum going. I think I feel that local authorities, most planners and most sort of county ecologists spread far too thinly, and they don't get maybe the chance to do all the to do because they don't have time, and it's not because they don't want to or they don't know how to do it. It's just, you know, funding I think is so tight for these things, and that certainly doesn't help in sort of delivering, you know, sort of better schemes. So it'd be great if somebody in government supported the local authorities slight to achieve what I suspect most of them would like to achieve, but just can't due to time constraints and budget constraints. Opinion, I don't know if that's really true, but that's what it always seems like to me. There's some fabulous people working in these places who can't deliver what they would probably want to.
Yeah, because I say the whole sort of, you know, the whole green infrastructure network, when you get into the green infrastructure side, when people are actually building in green infrastructure, it's just an extension, or it should work perfectly in there, shouldn't it really? It should slot quite easily within that bit that they're looking at.
Yeah, and hopefully it will do more, and you know, more and more. You know, now people are recognizing that there really is an issue sort of you know, at the ecological level, at the climate level, at everything, and all of those sort of emergencies that we're in are because of what we've done to biodiversity. So biodiversity is literally that at the base of everything that we need to really. So hopefully people will start doing that, but it's just making sure more and more people recognize that. So it's yeah, it's about speaking, I think, and trying to make a difference where you can.
Yeah, I mean, all of the local authorities that have declared a climate emergency anyway, I think, should be thinking about, you know, biodiversity with nature in amongst their action planning. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it, really? So yeah, that's been brilliant, Phoebe. So have you got any specific calls to action? Because I always ask everybody if they've got a specific call to action at the end of this session. What is it you would really like to see, apart from everybody building with nature? But is there anything in particular that you would say?
Make a difference, however small, whether that's in your own home, whether you turn a bit of your lawn over to wildflowers, it's at work, encouraging more people to cycle to work, whether it's whatever you can do, whether it's the bigger the better, but we can't all achieve bigger and better, so let's just all do, you know, a few small things a year to make a difference. Put up that Swift box that you've had sitting on, you know, in your spare room floor for you know, just do something, do what you can to make a small difference, and make sure your kids know about nature and get outside. That's the biggest thing. You know, so much time spent on the internet, and my daughter included, but it's about dragging them out whether they're not, and getting them back outside, reconnecting, getting wet, getting muddy, who cares, just wash your clothes when you get home, but get out there and rethink. I think if we don't get the children interested now, then we're going to be even facing even bigger problems further down the line.
Well said. Well said. I'm totally up for that. And you can see I've got 2 bird boxes on my shelf here. They are going up, by the way. They will go.
I haven't noticed
somewhere. They are
just
going
there.
somewhere. Yeah, I've got one to put in my own garden, and the other one's going to go somewhere on a project. So, yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, we should definitely do some work together in the future, Phoebe. I'm definitely up for doing, you know, more stuff certainly in our region, to try and get some more advice from you as well, and maybe some more events that we can run about nature, because I just think it's a fantastic standard that everyone should know about, and hopefully everyone that watches this episode will be more informed about building with nature, and hopefully you'll get lots of appointments to be a building with nature assessor.
I'm not so worried about that, but yeah, as long as everyone gets involved gets involved somehow, then yeah, I'll be very happy.
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you so much, Phoebe. It's been an absolute pleasure, and we will share any websites as well that you need us to on the final screen of the talk, and let's definitely keep in touch. And thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, that's right, and a quick thank you to you as well for absolutely everything that you do. You make a huge difference, and always appreciated, so thank you very much.
You're very welcome. We do our best, you know, at Climate Action North. We try and make a difference, but it's very difficult.
Oh, you're doing a good job.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Phoebe, and we will catch up with you soon. Thank you.
All right, take care.